Right now, somewhere in Washington, D.C., there is a server. On that server is your Social Security number, your tax returns going back 15 years, your Medicare records, your federal student loan history. If you've ever received government benefits, those records are there too. You didn't choose who has access to that server. You didn't vote for it. You weren't asked. In the first 90 days of 2020 FIMPO, a small group of people, mostly engineers in their 20s, obtained administrative access to the systems that hold the financial and personal records of 330 million Americans. They were not elected. They were not confirmed by the Senate. They did not go through standard security clearance, and when federal judges ordered them to stop, some of the data had already moved. This is not a theory. This is in the court filings. This is in the sworn testimony. This is in the emails that federal judges have already reviewed under seal. To understand what happened, you need to understand what DOGE actually is. Not what it's called, not what its stated mission is. What it actually is, legally. DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is not a federal agency. It has no statutory authorization from Congress. It was created by executive order in January 2025. It has no permanent staff in the traditional sense. Its workers are, in many cases, private citizens, tech employees, consultants, engineers, operating inside federal agencies under various temporary appointment mechanisms. This matters for one specific reason. Traditional federal employees undergo extensive background checks. They sign non-disclosure agreements with legal teeth. They are subject to the Privacy Act of 1974, which governs how federal data can be accessed and used. The legal status of DOGE workers with respect to these protections remains, as of this recording, a matter of active federal litigation in multiple courts simultaneously. Here's what is not in dispute. According to sworn court testimony and documentation submitted in federal cases in New York, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, DOGE personnel obtained access to the Social Security Administration's master beneficiary records, the IRS's taxpayer data systems, the Treasury Department's payment systems, the Department of Education's student loan database, the USAID foreign assistance records. In each case, the access was obtained rapidly, with minimal documentation, and in some cases over the explicit objections of career agency officials who raised legal concerns. One senior SSA official, whose name is protected in the court record, submitted a declaration stating, "The access request did not follow standard protocols. When I raised concerns through official channels, I was told to stand down. I was removed from my position 3 days later." Stand down. 3 days later. Let me be specific about what access means in the context of federal data systems. When we say DOGE obtained access to the IRS system, we are not talking about viewing a summary report. Root access, the level of access that multiple court filings describe, means the ability to read, copy, modify, or delete individual records. It means seeing your name, your address, your employer, your bank account routing numbers, your reported income going back to the system's records. For the Social Security Administration, it means every American's full earnings history, disability determination records, and direct deposit banking information. For the Department of Education, it means the loan balances, academic records, and financial information of 43 million Americans with federal student debt. Now, here's the question that federal judges are currently trying to answer. What was done with that access? And here is the answer that makes this story unlike anything this channel has covered before. We don't fully know. Not because the information doesn't exist, but because the people who obtained the access have not been required to produce a complete log of what was accessed, copied, or transmitted. In one federal case in Maryland, a judge ordered DOGE to produce access logs. The logs that were provided were described by the court as incomplete. In another case, in the Southern District of New York, a federal judge wrote in an opinion, I'm reading directly, "The court is troubled by the government's inability to provide a clear accounting of what data was accessed, by whom, and whether any of that data was transmitted outside of secure federal systems." Troubled by the inability to provide a clear accounting. The people who designed your Social Security system spent decades building in privacy protections. The Privacy Act of 1974 was passed after Watergate, specifically because Congress was alarmed by how government data could be weaponized against ordinary citizens. It took less than 90 days for those protections to be tested. Mariana Okonkwo had worked for the Social Security Administration for 19 years. She was the head of data integrity for the SSA's Northeast region. Her job was to protect the records of millions of Americans. In February 2025, she received an internal directive instructing her team to grant system access to personnel she did not recognize and who did not appear in the agency's employee directory. She sent a formal objection through official channels. She cited the Privacy Act. She cited SSA Security Protocol 7-3. She requested a legal opinion from the agency's general counsel. The response she received: grant the access. Immediately. She asked again for documentation of the legal authority. She did not receive it. She granted the access under protest, documented her objections in writing, and contacted her union representative. 6 days later, she was placed on administrative leave. She has not returned to work. Mariana Okonkwo is not alone. Across the federal government, dozens of career officials have been placed on leave, forced to resign, or had their security clearances suspended in the weeks following internal objections to DOGE access requests. The American Federation of Government Employees, which represents 750,000 federal workers, has filed multiple federal complaints documenting a pattern of retaliation against employees who raised legal or ethical objections. I want to read you something. This is from a declaration submitted to federal court by a Treasury Department career official. Their name is sealed. I am reading their words exactly. Quote, "I have served in federal government for 22 years. I have served under 5 presidents from both parties. I have never been asked to do something I believed was illegal until this year. When I raised my concerns, I was told, "This is happening with or without you. You need to decide if you're in or out." End quote. With or without you. You need to decide if you're in or out. He chose out. He submitted his resignation. He is now a federal whistleblower with legal protection, or what legal protection remains available when the agencies that enforce it. Here is the question I keep coming back to. Not, was this legal? That's for courts to decide, and courts are deciding it right now. The question I keep coming back to is simpler. Who authorized the people who authorized this? And if the answer is no one we voted for, what does that mean for what happens next? The Social Security Administration, the IRS, the Treasury Department. 3 separate agencies, 3 separate access events, 3 sets of internal objections, 3 patterns of retaliation against objectors. Let's talk about what this looks like when you put it on a timeline. Week 1 of DOGE operations. Personnel begin arriving at SSA headquarters. They request access to systems containing the records of 71 million Social Security recipients. Career IT staff who ask for authorization documentation are told the authorization comes from the top. The top is not further defined. Week 3. DOGE personnel are inside the IRS modernization systems. These systems contain every American tax return filed electronically in the last decade. A career IRS official sends a memo to agency leadership warning that the access may not comply with Section 6103 of the Internal Revenue Code, the law that makes tax records confidential. The memo is not responded to. The official is reassigned the next day. Week 6. Treasury payment systems. These systems process $6 trillion in annual payments, Social Security benefits, tax refunds, military pay, government contractor payments. DOGE personnel are given the ability to view, and according to one court declaration, to modify payment instructions. A senior Treasury official later testified to Congress, "I was not aware that access of this nature had been granted until after it occurred. When I inquired about the authorization chain, I was unable to get a clear answer." A senior Treasury official, unable to get a clear answer about who authorized access to the system that pays America's bills. By week 10, federal judges in 3 jurisdictions had issued orders limiting DOGE access. Some of those orders were complied with. Some were appealed. And in at least one case, a federal judge found that a government attorney had made representations to the court that were materially inconsistent with subsequently produced documents. Materially inconsistent. That is federal judicial language for someone was not telling the truth in a federal courtroom. The Government Accountability Office, Congress's independent investigative arm, has opened a formal investigation. Their preliminary report, released in March 2025, found that DOGE had not maintained adequate documentation of its data access activities in at least 4 federal agencies. Not adequate documentation of who looked at your records. I want to talk to you specifically, not to Americans, not to taxpayers, to you. If you have ever filed a federal tax return, Your records were in the systems that were accessed. If you received Social Security benefits or paid Social Security taxes, your records were in the systems that were accessed. If you have a federal student loan, your records were in the systems that were accessed. If you have ever received Medicare or Medicaid, your records were in the systems that were accessed. I am not telling you those records were stolen. I am not telling you your identity was compromised. What I am telling you is what the court documents say. We do not know who accessed your records specifically. We do not know what was done with that access. We do not have a complete accounting. And the people responsible for producing that accounting have so far not produced it. Here is what you can do. 1. You can request your Social Security earnings record at ssa.gov. It's free. It takes 5 minutes. Look for anything you don't recognize. 2. You can request a free credit report at annualcreditreport.com. All 3 bureaus. Do this quarterly. 3. You can place a free security freeze on your credit at Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. This prevents anyone from opening new credit in your name without your explicit authorization. 4. You can monitor your IRS account at irs.gov. Create an id.me account if you haven't. You'll see if any tax returns have been filed in your name or if your account has had unusual activity. These are practical steps. You should be doing them anyway. In light of what this video documents, I would do them this week. I want to be honest with you about something. This story is not finished. The court cases are ongoing. The GAO investigation is ongoing. The congressional inquiries are ongoing. We do not yet have the full picture of what was accessed, by whom, and what was done with it. What we have is court documents, sworn testimony, internal government communications obtained through litigation, and the statements of federal officials who put their careers and their legal protections on the line to tell what they saw. Pause. Here is the question that I think matters most and that almost no one is asking directly. The systems that DOGE accessed, the IRS, the SSA, the Treasury payment systems, these are not just data warehouses. They are the infrastructure of governance. The IRS system is how the government knows who owes what and who is owed what. The SSA system is how 71 million Americans receive the benefits they paid into for decades. The Treasury payment system is how $6 trillion moves through the American economy every year. If those systems are modified incorrectly, intentionally, or accidentally, the consequences are not abstract. Payments stop. Records are wrong. People who are owed money don't receive it. People who don't owe money are told they do. The infrastructure of the social contract, the mechanism by which citizens and government exchange obligations, is also the infrastructure that is now under a management structure that no living American voted on. Pause. 5 seconds. I don't know how this story ends. Nobody does yet. What I know is that it is happening. It is documented. And most people have not read the documents. Now you have. Pause. Subscribe to Dark Mind. New case every Tuesday. Drop a comment with one word. How does this make you feel? I read every comment. I'll see you in the dark.